westbound before 14th Street in the left lane with traffic jam from the 3rd Street Tunnel. And on the Rock Creek Parkway northbound between Virginia Avenue and K Street, there is construction there. Only one lane gets through, and that is causing some very slow traffic. Also in Bethesda, there is construction southbound on the Rockville Pike between the Beltway and Coons Hill Road. 2 right lanes are blocked. Right turn lane is also available there, but it is causing some slow traffic. In Adelphi, watch out for the accident right now on Rig Road at University Boulevard. Use extra caution there. And also watch out for the accidents in the district on 9th Street at Rhode Island Avenue in Northwest. In Virginia, Garrisonville, Aquia, there is still some accident activity on the shoulder northbound on 95, north of Garrisonville Road. That has traffic very slow from Courthouse Road, so just watch out for those delays. Also, look out for closure right now in the district in Southeast. 6th Street is closed between Independence Avenue and Massachusetts Avenue. That's for water service repairs. And now the Bloomberg 99.1 3-day weather forecast for today. Mostly sunny with afternoon showers and thunderstorms possible. Highs 90 to 95 for tonight. Showers and storms end this evening. Lingering cloudiness overnight. Lows near 70 for tomorrow. Turning sunny and not as hot or humid. Highs 85 to 90. And for Thursday, sunny and a high of 85 to 90. Right now, 90 degrees in Washington. I'm Beth Reuters for traffic and weather on Bloomberg 99.1.
Broadcasting to the nation's capital, this is WDCH-FM, Bowie, Baltimore, Washington. WJC-FM HD2, Catonsville, Bloomberg 99.1. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. A very slight bounce off the bottom. Red on the screen. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining. 10-year yield right now 3.11%. The 2-year yield 3.46%. Stocks lower after job openings data showed that the Fed has more room to raise rates to curb inflation, a resolve that several central bank officials reiterated in the past few days. S&P down 50 to 3980, a drop of 1.2%. Dow Industrials down 340, a decline of 1.1%. NASDAQ down 178, a drop right now of 1.5%. Spot gold down $13 the ounce to $17.24, lower by about 0.7%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil down 5.4%, $91.78 a barrel on WTI. So a down day across the board. What about the outlook for markets heading into the new trading month of September? Megan Horniman is Chief Investment Officer at Burton's Capital Advisors.
Longer term, I'm a bull. I think in the next 3 to 4 months through the rest of this year, it's going to be a really volatile time. We're coming into a seasonal period with September that tends to be very weak. We've got a lot of uncertainty from what's going on with the European gas markets, the Federal Reserve, and we also have the midterm elections coming up.
Best Buy shares up 1.6%. Best Buy surpassed Wall Street's profit estimates after warning a month ago that it was under pressure from waning consumer electronics demand. 2 prominent shareholder advisory firms, Institutional Shareholder Services and Glass Lewis, are urging Twitter shareholders to support a proposed takeover by Elon Musk, despite efforts by the world's richest man to back out of that deal. Twitter is down 1.8% right now. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 54, a drop of 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio and my apartment in Brooklyn, it's Bloomberg Business Week this Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. I'm Tim Stenovec, still broadcasting from home in Brooklyn while I continue to recover from COVID. A Bloomberg senior reporter and host of ETFIQ on Bloomberg TV, Katie Greifeld, is in for Carol Masser this afternoon. She's holding on the fort in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio in New York. Katie, stocks off their lows, but we're still seeing quite the sell-off.
Quite the sell-off. Hangover, I believe, is how some people are calling it. A Fed hangover, if you will.
Yeah, what's gonna cure it? I don't know.
I don't know, but in any case,
we're going to talk about that a little later. More on the macro data that's moving markets too. Also in today's program, the latest when it comes to Elon Musk versus Twitter and high energy prices. Renewables, right? They'd seem like a good thing. Well, we're going to tell you about the bottlenecks that are preventing cheap wind and solar energy from reaching high demand areas. We're also going to get a temperature check of the restaurant industry with the CEO of Open Table. And we've got the authors of a couple of great new books that are out now that chronicle some huge businesses. California Burning is all about the fall of the state's largest utility. And like, comment, subscribe is about how YouTube rose to world domination. All that and more coming up in the next 3 hours. First up, let's get to the Market Drivers Report. And with us now in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, Preeti Gupta, she's markets correspondent for Bloomberg. Mike Regan is senior editor for Bloomberg Markets. He joins us this afternoon on the phone from New Jersey. Preeti, I want to start with you. It's not much pretty to be seen out there. 43 stocks higher in the S&P 500 right now. 42, I should say. Everything else lower, a sea of red. What do you see in today's trade?
I think what's really striking to me is not necessarily the equity hangover, as you will. The S&P 500 down 1.3%, but I think it's the lack of drivers for it here, especially when you're looking cross-asset. When we think of the kind of pressure you're seeing in the NASDAQ, for example, down 1.5%, I think the gut instinct is to, hey, go look at rates, go look at the dollar, for example. And right now, neither one of them are flashing the kind of volatility that I think would ordinarily, at least in the last couple of weeks, months, arguably the last year or so, really provoke this kind of volatility in the equity market. To me, actually, what's pretty striking is that at the same time that you're seeing the stock market drop, you're also seeing the commodity market drop. Oil, for example, Brent crude at a 98 handle, down about 6%. And to me, if you actually look at the way these charts are moving, for a radio audience, this is hard to kind of explain, but stick with me here. It almost looks like they're moving in sync. And to me, that is a good sign, because it means that that kind of inverse correlation between commodities and the stock market is perhaps in the early stages of being broken. The idea here being that if oil prices are higher and higher, that essentially feeds into the inflation pressures and then feeds back into higher recessionary odds, which then again weighs on the stock market. But if you actually look at the oil market and the stock market moving together, it means that they're finally on the same page when it comes to growth, in the upward direction and the downward direction.
Mike, weigh in here. I mean, when you look at today's trade, again, I see stocks lower. We had a glimmer of green at the open. That quickly faded. Think about what we got from Jerome Powell on Friday. Think about some of the data we got today. I mean, do you agree with Preeti that there doesn't seem to be a satisfying driver here, or can we chalk this up to, again, sort of the after effects of Jerome? And I was going to say Jerome, I don't even know what I was.
Jerome and Company?
Jackson Powell, Jerome Powell.
You got this.
How many J's?
Well, I think the hangover analogy is a pretty good one. I mean, if you look at the data that did come out today, the JOLTS job openings was a surprise on the upside. So it's still over 11 million job openings in the U.S., near that record high. And I think it's we're back into that good news is bad news type of scenario, especially after Powell's remarks on Friday, and really all the Fed officials who have spoken since then, sort of all singing from the same hymn book at this point. I'm going to show my age a little bit, but we're ready. Can't stop thinking about Alan Greenspan back in the day used to talk about monetary policy as like running a bathtub, and sometimes you need to go heavy on the cold water, sometimes you go heavier on the hot water, trying to get that temperature just right. And, it just seems like Powell really intentionally turned that cold water on full blast on Friday. There had been a hint of a little bit of warm water earlier in the summer when the minutes came out and Powell's last press conference, where they both sort of discussed the idea that an excessive 75 basis point hike in September was not guaranteed. And it's kind of a reversal of that now. And I think, the equity market is still trying to digest those remarks and the subsequent Fed remarks, especially through the lens of this data this morning, where the good news is bad news to some degree, and consumer confidence as well being above expectations really kind of, I think is the main focus for the moment.
Preeti, come on back in here and talk a little bit about anticipation for Friday. 300,000 jobs added to the economy. We can start saying added at this point because we've recovered all the jobs that were lost during the COVID crisis. How much are traders sitting back and waiting for that number? I mean, because volumes still are higher than average on the S&P today.
They
They are, and you know what I think is important is not just the kind of perhaps anxiety or jitters going ahead of the payrolls reports, but also I think there's a regional bias here that is really worth paying attention to. For example, in the Asian session, you really did see it become a turnaround Tuesday. The majority of the European session was also in the green just until the Americans started trading, and that's really where you saw a lot of those gains getting faded. So I think, Tim, to your point, a lot of it is going to come down to the payrolls, but it's still unclear what is actually good news for this market, because on the one hand, higher unemployment or a miss on payrolls is good news because it means, in theory, a less tight labor market, but on the other hand, it means, well, a less tight labor market, that isn't a very good thing either when it comes to just the strength of the economy as well. So I think there's a little bit of confusion here in terms of how the market's going to interpret bad news and whether bad news is good news.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Kriti Gupta is markets correspondent for Bloomberg. She's with us in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Also joining us, Mike Regan, senior editor at Bloomberg Markets, on the phone from New Jersey. Sign up for Kriti's chart of the day. You can do that at kgupta129 at bloomberg.net. Also check out her Twitter and Instagram at Kriti Gupta News. Let's get a check on world and national news. For that, we go to Nancy Lyons in our 99.1 newsroom in Washington. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Tim. President Biden will be talking about his crime prevention initiatives this afternoon in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He's riding high off a series of legislative victories and falling gas prices. Pennsylvania is one of a handful of states that could determine control of Congress. Former President Donald Trump plans to hold a rally in Wilkes-Barre this weekend. Well, the federal government is looking at ways to move COVID-19 treatment from the public sector to the commercial marketplace. We get the latest on that from Bloomberg's Amy Morris. The White House has been signaling in recent weeks it will start moving away from being the only purchaser of COVID vaccines, tests, and treatments. White House COVID-19 response coordinator Dr. Ashish Jha has said that commercial sales could start in 2023. Sources tell Bloomberg News that HHS is beginning the process now, but approval of those commercial sales would take months. This as the White House warns it's running out of public funds for vaccines and treatments and will pause free at-home test orders. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio. The United Nations and the Pakistani government have launched an emergency appeal for $160 million. That's to help those hit hardest by the floods that are devastating the country. More than 1 million homes have been damaged. More than 1,100 people have died since mid-June. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls the weather event a colossal crisis.
These funds will provide 5.2 million people with food, water, sanitation, emergency education, protection, and health support.
Guterres says it is time to stop sleepwalking toward the destruction of our planet. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg Business Time in the District 211. Now a look at local headlines. Supporters of moving the FBI headquarters out of the district have a new reason to bring it to the suburbs. They say it'll help the federal government meet its diversity and inclusion goals. We get more on that from Bloomberg's Steve Potisk.
4 of Maryland's top black elected officials have sent a letter to the head of the General Services Administration. They say an FBI HQ in Prince George's would bring economic growth to a majority black community, and that should be considered in the site selection process. Maryland Matters reports the leaders noted that the Biden administration released a plan this year to advance equity and opportunity for black people across the country. They say the FBI move could be an extension of that commitment. Steve Potisk, Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 HD2.
If you've recently bought gas at a 7-Eleven on Crane Highway in Anne Arundel County, you may want to check your bank statement for unusual activity. Fox 45 reports police found credit card skimmers above the card readers at that gas station. Those skimmers can take information from a card's magnetic strip. It's time now for the Beltway Business Report. Here is Bloomberg's Tracy Jonke.
It's not the first time a sporting event has been touted for the economic benefit to the Baltimore area, but this may be the first time that event involved cycling. On Sunday, the region will host the Maryland Cycling Classic, a 120-mile road race that organizers say